beneath the golden glow of a London summer where ancient stones guard secrets of centuries, a single act can rewrite history. Picture Buckingham Palace, its courtyard alive with tourists, their cameras flashing like fireflies against the iconic red tunics and towering bearskin hats of the Queen's Guards. Among them stood Staff Sergeant Thomas Kane, a man whose vigilant eyes missed nothing. On a sweltering May 7th, 2025, those eyes caught a flicker of terror in a young girl's gaze, a silent cry that would unravel a predator's scheme and redefine the meaning of duty. This is the tale of a soldier, a father, and a hero who risked everything for a child he didn't know. Stay with us, folks, because this story of bravery will grip your heart and not let go. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment and let's plunge into a saga that proves one person's courage can save a life. The palace courtyard pulsed with energy, a vibrant tapestry of voices from every corner of the globe, woven together under a sky as clear as a mountain stream. Thomas Kane stood at his post, his ceremonial uniform immaculate despite the July heat that left tourists mopping their brows with crumpled maps. At 42, Kane was a study in discipline, his broad shoulders squared, his jaw set. 2 tours in conflict zones had sharpened his instincts to a razor's edge, teaching him that survival depended on noticing the smallest details, a shadow out of place, a voice too steady. Palace duty was a different beast, a world of polished boots and unyielding tradition. But Kane's mind never rested. He scanned the crowd, not with the vacant stare of his comrades, but with subtle shifts of focus, a skill that had kept him alive in war-torn deserts and now anchored him amid the chaos of sightseers. Through the sea of faces, a pair of eyes snared his attention. They belonged to a girl, perhaps 8, her slight frame dwarfed by the man gripping her shoulder. While other children bounced with excitement, pointing at the guards' towering hats, she stood motionless, her shoulders hunched as if trying to vanish into the cobblestones. Her long sleeves, odd in the summer swelter, covered her arms where others wore short-sleeved shirts. The man beside her was polished, tailored jacket, practiced smile, but Kane noticed how his fingers dug into her shoulder when he thought eyes were elsewhere, making her flinch. "Stand up straight," the man hissed, his voice a blade wrapped in silk. "No talking, remember?" The girl nodded, her gaze fixed on the ground, and when the man glanced at his phone, her posture eased for a fleeting moment before snapping back under his grip. Kane's stomach churned. He thought of his daughters, Lily and Grace, their laughter filling their cozy Birmingham home. This girl's fear was a stark contrast, a silent alarm that set his senses ablaze. As the morning unfolded, the man's control became unmistakable. The girl's eyes tracked him constantly, maintaining the precise distance he permitted, like a deer tethered to a hunter. When a family with giggling children passed by, she watched them with a longing that pierced Kane's heart, only to drop her gaze when the man squeezed her arm. A tourist, all warmth, leaned down. "Excited to see the guards, sweetheart?" The man cut in smoothly. "She's shy around strangers, aren't you, Emma?" The girl nodded, but Kane caught a heartbeat's delay, as if the name didn't belong to her. "My niece from Birmingham," the man added, his hand never leaving her shoulder. "First time at the ceremony." The crowd surged forward, and the man lifted the girl, her sleeve riding up to reveal bruises, dark, finger-shaped marks that screamed of cruelty. Kane's jaw clenched, his pulse quickening. "1 more hour," the man muttered, "then we're leaving. Be good, and maybe I won't punish you tonight." The girl's shoulders sagged, a resignation that spoke of far more than a stern guardian. Kane's mind raced, his ceremonial role chaining him to his post. but his training roared danger. He'd seen predatory behavior before, during counter-trafficking courses the regiment had drilled into them months earlier. The girl's silence, her hypervigilance, the way she flinched. It wasn't shyness. It was survival, honed by terror. The man maneuvered them to a spot partially obscured from security cameras, whispering words Kane strained to catch. "Remember what I said about running? They'll never believe you. No one's looking for you anymore." The girl's face remained blank, but her fists clenched, not in defiance, but in a desperate grip on fear. When a tourist bumped them, the man yanked her upright, exposing more bruises in various stages of healing. He caught Kane's stare and quickly adjusted her sleeve, checking his watch before steering her toward the crowd's edge. Kane's pulse thundered. This wasn't a family outing. This was a predator moving his prey, seconds from slipping into London's labyrinth. Then it happened. The girl's eyes met Kane's, sunlight catching the tears brimming in her hazel irises. Her gaze wasn't just fear. It was a desperate plea, slicing through his professional reserve like a blade. It stirred something primal, the same instinct that had once driven him into gunfire to save a wounded comrade in a dusty war zone. An elderly couple nearby had been watching, their concern mirroring Kane's. The woman approached, her voice gentle. "Lovely day for your visit," she said to the girl. "First time seeing the guards?" The man answered for her. "My niece is shy. We're in a hurry." The woman, undeterred, smiled. "I taught primary school for 40 years. Shy children are often the most observant." Her husband added, "My wife has a knack with kids." Kane saw their strategy, creating a social barrier around the girl, forcing the man to maintain his facade. "Emma, would you like a sweet?" The woman offered. Again, that hesitation at the name. "No sweets before lunch!" The man snapped, his tone sharp enough to make the couple exchange glances. A young mother nearby joined in. "My daughter has that same backpack from the Birmingham school district," she said, pointing to the girl's blue bag. The name tags turned in. Shouldn't it say Emma? The man's grip tightened, his charm fraying. "We need to go," he said abruptly, pulling the girl toward the exit. "Our tour bus is waiting." The elderly man protested. "The ceremony's not finished." "Change of plans!" the man barked, dragging the girl through the crowd, her small feet stumbling to keep up. Kane tracked them, his body rigid but his mind racing like a storm. The girl looked back once, her eyes locking with his, conveying a universe of terror and hope. They were nearly at the gates, moments from vanishing into the city's maze. The man's head swiveled, scanning for security, his grip making the girl stumble. "Walk properly," he hissed. "You're making a scene." The elderly man called out, "Excuse me, sir, your niece dropped something." The distraction bought precious seconds. In that pause, the girl's eyes found Kane's again across the courtyard. What happened next would etch itself into his soul forever. Her right hand rose, brushing hair from her face, or so it seemed. But the movement was deliberate, precise. Her fist closed, opened, then pressed against her opposite palm. Kane's heart stopped. It was the universal children's distress signal, taught to kids for moments when words could mean death. A silent scream for help that only those trained to look would see. The man caught her gesture, his face twisting into rage. He grabbed her wrist, making her gasp. "You little," he growled, abandoning all pretense as he yanked her toward the exit. Kane's mind snapped into combat mode, assessing options in a heartbeat. Breaking formation could end his career, strip him of the honor he'd built over decades. But letting this child disappear was a price he couldn't pay. He was a guardsman, a soldier, a father. The choice was clear. His boots cracked against the cobblestones as he broke position. the sound echoing like a thunderclap. Tourists gasped, cameras swinging toward him, capturing a moment that would soon blaze across the globe. His fellow guards remained statue still, though their eyes flicked to follow him, a silent acknowledgement of the breach. "Stop right there!" Kane's voice boomed with military authority, cutting through the courtyard's din. The man froze, startled, giving Kane time to close the gap. Tourists parted like waves, phones raised to record the unprecedented scene. "Release the child immediately," Kane commanded, planting himself between them and the exit, his 6-foot frame a wall of resolve. The girl stood frozen, eyes wide, as the man's grip loosened slightly in shock, but didn't let go. "This is outrageous," he blustered, his accent polished again. "She's my niece. We have a schedule." "Release her now," Kane repeated, his tone a steel blade. The girl's eyes darted between them, fear warring with a flicker of hope. "This is none of your business," the man hissed, leaning close. "You're making a mistake. Do you know who I am?" Kane met the girl's gaze, his voice softening for her. "I know exactly what you are." To her, he said, "Young lady, would you like to step over here while I speak with your uncle?" The word uncle dripped with disbelief, a challenge the man couldn't ignore. "She's not going anywhere," the man snapped. "Return to your post before I report you." Palace security closed in, one guard radioing for backup, his voice clipped and urgent. Kane raised his voice, ensuring the crowd heard. "Sir, I observe the international distress signal from this child. Protocol requires me to ensure her safety." The crowd tightened around them, a living wall of witnesses. The elderly couple pushed forward. "That man's behavior has concerned us for half an hour," the elderly man said, his voice firm. "The child's terrified of him." The young mother added, "She didn't respond naturally to the name Emma, and he got defensive when I mentioned Birmingham schools." The man's eyes flicked between the crowd, security, and the blocked exit, his charm unraveling like a cheap suit. "Last chance," Kane said, his voice low and deadly. "Release her arm, or I'll remove your hand myself." The man tried to rally, turning to the crowd. "This is absurd. I'm her uncle. Emma, tell them who I am." The girl stayed silent, eyes down, still not answering to Emma. Kane knelt to her level, blocking escape routes, his voice gentle but firm. "Young lady, the signal you made. We teach kids to use it when they need help. Was that why you did it?" Before she could speak, the man cut in. "She was brushing her hair. This is ridiculous." Kane stood, unyielding. "I need identification and documentation of your relationship to this child." Security arrived. A male officer demanding, "Sergeant, what's the situation?" "Suspected child endangerment," Kane replied crisply. "The child displayed the distress signal. I've observed multiple signs of abuse." The man produced an ID. James Carver, British citizen. "My niece, Emma, is visiting from Birmingham. Temporary guardianship while her mother's hospitalized. A misunderstanding." A female officer crouched beside the girl, who trembled now that adults stood between her and the man. "Can you tell us your full name?" The girl glanced at the man before whispering, "Emma Carver." Kane caught the unnatural delivery, like she was reciting a script, not claiming her identity. "How old are you?" the officer asked. 8, she said, after another fearful glance. "Your uncle says your mother's in hospital. What's her name?" Panic flashed across the girl's face, her breath catching. The man jumped in. "Her mother's Margaret, my sister. This is upsetting her." The elderly woman stepped forward, her voice steady. "She didn't react to Emma until he answered for her." The young mother pointed. "Check her backpack. The name tag's turned in." Kane reached for the blue backpack, his movements deliberate. The man lunged, but security blocked him, their hands firm on his shoulders. Kane turned the tag outward, revealing childish handwriting. Sophie Harper, Year 3, Willow Grove Primary. The man stammered. "That's not hers. She picked up the wrong one." Kane locked eyes with the girl, his voice a lifeline. "Sophie? Is your name Sophie Harper?" Her eyes flickered with recognition, then fear as she glanced at the man. "It's okay," Kane said gently. "He can't hurt you now. Are you Sophie Harper from Willow Grove Primary?" Tears welled as she nodded, her voice a whisper. "Yes, my name's Sophie. He took me from school. Said my parents were dead and nobody wanted me." The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath as security cuffed the man, his face now a mask of cold fury. "You're making a mistake," he snarled. "You don't know who you're dealing with." A tourist stepped forward, phone in hand, her voice trembling. "I recognize her. Sophie Harper, missing for 3 weeks. It's all over Birmingham News." She showed a missing child alert, the girl's face unmistakable. Security tightened their grip, radioing for police, their voices urgent. Kane faced the man, his voice ice. "James Carver, if that's your real name, you're under arrest for kidnapping and child endangerment. I suspect the police will find worse." The courtyard froze, a moment of eerie calm before the storm. The man's charm vanished, replaced by a predator's calculation. His eyes darted, weighing options with chilling precision. "You've got nothing," he said softly. The girl's confused, traumatized. The female officer shielded Sophie, who shook uncontrollably, her small hands clutching the officer's sleeve. Kane watched the man's posture, every muscle coiled for action. "Police are 3 minutes out," the male officer announced. "Sir, remain calm." Then, like a viper, the man struck. He elbowed the officer's chest, following with a headbutt that dropped him to the ground. A concealed blade flashed as he lunged for Sophie, his voice a snarl. "If I can't have her, no one will." Kane's training surged, muscle memory from countless close-quarter drills. He intercepted the attack, deflecting the knife with his left hand while driving his right fist into the man's sternum, the impact folding him forward like a broken hinge. The man recovered, slashing wildly as tourists screamed and scattered, their footsteps a chaotic drumbeat on the cobblestones. The blade caught Kane's forearm, blood soaking his tunic, but pain was a distant echo, drowned by adrenaline. "Get the girl away," he shouted. The female officer pulled Sophie behind a wall of guards who'd broken ranks, their ceremonial stillness shattered by the urgency of the moment. Kane's fury unleashed, a tempest of protective rage. He blocked another thrust, his fist crashing into the man's jaw with a crack that echoed across the courtyard. The man staggered, spitting blood, his eyes wild. "You're dead," he hissed. "My people will find your family." The threat against Lily and Grace ignited Kane, a fire that burned through reason. His next blow shattered the man's nose, blood spraying across the stones. A strike to the throat collapsed his airway, and a final hit to the temple dropped him like a felled tree. Kane pinned him, fists raining down, each blow fueled by visions of Sophie, his daughters, and countless unknown victims. "Enough, Sergeant." Hands pulled him back, his colleague's voice firm. "He's down, Tom." Kane relented, discipline clawing its way back. The man lay bloodied, barely conscious, his face a ruined mask. "Get a medic," Kane rasped, his voice hoarse. "Make sure he lives for justice." Police sirens wailed, cutting through the chaos as medics rushed in, their bags clattering. Kane stood, breathing hard, his uniform torn and bloodied, knuckles split. "Sergeant, you need a doctor," a palace staffer urged, eyeing his arm. "The girl, first," Kane insisted, his eyes finding Sophie, huddled with the female officer, watching him with a mix of awe and fear. "Is he dead?" she whispered, her voice small. "No," Kane said, softening. "He's hurt, but he'll face what he's done." Medics loaded the cuffed man onto a stretcher, his wrists bound. Sophie pointed at Kane's arm, her concern piercing through her trauma. "You're bleeding." He managed a smile, his voice steady despite the pain. "Just a scratch. Sophie, how long did he have you?" 3 weeks, she said, tears falling. "He took me from school, said my parents were dead." Her voice broke, a sob escaping. That nobody was looking. A female detective approached, her badge glinting. "Sophie, I'm Detective Patel. You're safe now. We've contacted your parents. They're flying from Birmingham." Sophie's eyes widened, hope battling fear. "They're alive?" "Very much," Patel said, her voice warm. "They've searched for you every day." Tears spilled, not of terror but of relief, a dam breaking after weeks of silence. As medics checked her bruises, Sophie grabbed Kane's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Will you stay? I'm scared he'll come back." "He won't," Kane promised, his voice a vow. "I'll stay until your parents arrive." Patel pulled him aside, her voice low. "His phone has images of other kids, international connections. This wasn't his first." Kane's jaw clenched, his earlier violence feeling justified. "Will she recover?" "Kids are resilient," Patel said. "Your intervention likely saved her life, maybe others." The palace transformed into a crime scene, the ceremony halted, yellow tape fluttering in the breeze. Kane sat outside the medical unit, arm bandaged, giving his statement to Patel. "The distress signal was unmistakable," he said, demonstrating the gesture, fist closed, opened, pressed to palm. Her bruises, her fear, his lies. It all pointed to immediate danger. Palace officials conferred nearby, their glances heavy with scrutiny. His commander, Major Harrington, arrived, his face unreadable, a storm brewing behind his eyes. "They'll review this," Patel noted, her tone neutral. "Breaking formation is unheard of." Kane nodded, his posture rigid. "I'd do it again." A commotion at the checkpoint interrupted them. A couple rushed through, the woman sobbing, the man supporting her, their faces etched with desperate hope. "Sophie's parents," Patel said, "flown in by police helicopter." Kane stood as the Harpers were brought to Sophie. She leapt from the examination table, crying, "Mommy! Daddy!" Mrs. Harper collapsed, hugging her daughter with a fierceness that seemed to defy time, while Mr. Harper wrapped them both, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "We never stopped looking," Mrs. Harper whispered, her voice a mantra. "Not for one moment." After minutes of tearful reunion, Patel gently interrupted. "Mr. and Mrs. Harper, I'm Detective Patel. We'll need to take Sophie to hospital for examination, but first, meet the man who rescued your daughter." She gestured to Kane, who stood respectfully, his uniform still blood-stained. Mr. Harper approached, his hand trembling as he extended it. "They told us what happened," he said, voice breaking. "A Queen's Guard breaking protocol to save our girl. I have no words." Kane accepted the handshake, his voice steady. "Your daughter saved herself, sir. She remembered her safety training and had the courage to use it." Mrs. Harper, clutching Sophie, joined them, her eyes red. "You risked your career for a child you didn't know. How can we thank you?" "No thanks needed," Kane said simply. "I have daughters. I did what any parent would." Sophie broke from her mother's embrace and ran to Kane, hugging him fiercely, her small arms tight around his waist. "Thank you for believing me," she whispered, her voice muffled against his tunic. Kane knelt, his composure cracking, his voice thick with emotion. Always, Sophie, always. The next morning, Kane reported to Major Harrington's office, his dress uniform pristine despite the bandage under his sleeve. Viral footage of his actions had swept the globe, headlines screaming of a Queen's Guard's heroism. "Sergeant Kane," Harrington began, his tone formal as Kane stood at attention. At ease. Kane shifted, his eyes meeting the photos lining the office. Generations of guards who'd upheld tradition through wars and crises. "You understand why you're here?" Harrington asked, his expression neutral. "Yes, sir. To address my breach of protocol." Harrington nodded, his fingers tapping a document. "In 362 years of regimental guard duties, no guardsman has abandoned his post during a ceremonial parade." Kane stood tall. "Yes, sir. The protocol exists to maintain discipline and tradition." Harrington studied him, his gaze piercing. "There's no protocol for a distress signal observed during duty. The palace has received over 15,000 messages since yesterday. The regiment's social media gained 2 million followers overnight. Your actions saved a child missing for 3 weeks, apprehended a predator, and potentially protected countless others." He lifted the document, his voice measured. "Recommendations from the palace, police, and regimental command agree. While your breach must be noted to avoid precedent, no disciplinary action should be taken. A formal caution will be placed in your file alongside a commendation for extraordinary judgment." Harrington allowed a rare smile, his eyes softening. "The palace requests your return to ceremonial duties as soon as you're medically cleared. Tourists are flocking to see the hero guard." Kane blinked, relief washing through him. "Thank you, sir." Harrington extended a hand, a gesture of personal respect. "The regiment is proud, Sergeant. There are moments when duty to humanity outweighs even our most sacred traditions. One more thing," Harrington added, his tone lighter. "The regiment has approved compassionate leave. The Harpers have invited you to a family gathering this weekend. They want your daughters to meet Sophie." Kane's formality softened, emotion breaking through. "I'd be honored, sir." 3 days later, in the Harpers' Birmingham garden, Kane watched Lily and Grace play with Sophie, their laughter mingling with the scent of blooming roses. Sophie's bruises were fading, and more importantly, the haunted look in her eyes was receding, replaced by cautious joy. "She's sleeping through the night," Claire Harper confided, joining Kane on a garden bench. "The therapist says it's remarkable. She'll have a long road, but her strength is extraordinary." David Harper approached with drinks, his face etched with gratitude. "Police called this morning. His real name isn't James Carver. He's wanted in 3 countries for similar crimes. Sophie won't need to testify. The evidence on his devices is overwhelming." He paused, his voice thick. "They also said he planned to move her out of the country that night. If you hadn't acted—" The unspoken hung heavy, a shadow of what might have been. "How did you know?" Claire asked, her voice soft. "So many walked by without seeing." Kane watched Sophie weave a daisy chain, her fingers nimble. "Training helped, the signal, his control. But mostly, I saw her as a father. Once you see a child in danger, you can't unsee it." Sophie placed a daisy chain on Grace's head, her smile catching Kane's eye, a beacon of healing. Later she approached, holding a folded paper. "I made this for you," she said, her voice shy. "Mommy helped me write it." Kane opened the card, finding a drawing of a guard in a bearskin hat, childish handwriting beside it. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible." He knelt, his throat tight, emotion raw. "You were never invisible, Sophie. Not to those who know how to look." He met her parents' tearful eyes, a bond forged in crisis, unbreakable. Driving home, Grace asked, "Daddy, did you really break the rules to save her?" Kane glanced at his daughters in the rearview mirror, his voice steady. Sometimes, love, you choose the duty that matters most. Lily nodded, her 8-year-old certainty absolute. You chose right. What would you do if you saw a child in danger? Could you spot the distress signal Sophie used? Fist closed, opened, pressed to palm. One person's vigilance can mean everything. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share. It could teach someone to save a life. Stay tuned for more tales of courage, and tell us, how far would you go for a child who isn't yours?